Michael Eisenberg, welcome back to the Yeshiva.
Thank you, Rabbi Taragin. It's good to be here with you.
Okay, this is
Good
a
to be
place
here.
overlooking the Gush, overlooking our base medrash on a mountain that we spent so many great years together, the golden years, inspired by giants. And now you've become a giant, and you're touching so many people's lives in so many different ways and inspiring them. And I don't know where you find all the time, but you continue to pump out the Svarim, incredible books about Judaism, about life, trying to bring our message and our Torah to the broader public. Tell us about your most recent publication.
Well, it just came out on August 24th, The Tree of Life and Prosperity. It's a translation and adaptation of a book I wrote in Hebrew on Sefer Breshit. And what are the lessons that you will learn through the Pshat Psukim on the economy in particular that Sefer Breshit and the Torah in general is trying to impart on us, and lessons from what you do. You know, the funny thing about life is we spend most of our day working. We don't spend it sleeping, or at least me, I don't spend it learning. We spend it working. And so, you know, if the Torah deals with every part of life, that should be certainly a part it deals with.
When you talk about how Torah affects our economy, if we go back 40 years ago, that would sound like a book that maybe 10% of the population would be interested in. The accountants with Coke bottle glasses. Evidently, the economy today means a lot more to people than it once did. It's not just the peripheral part of why is the economy so formative in people's lives, someone that's deeply immersed in the world of economy.
That's a great question, one I haven't contemplated actually, but I think there's a few things. One is change is everywhere. And so every profession we've known for the last 100, 200,000 years is turning over, much like it did in the Industrial Revolution, because of the digitization of the economy. You know, banks don't look like banks anymore, and credit card companies are barely starting to look like credit card companies. We run it all from our phones, and digitization has gotten to everywhere. So I think that's point number one. Point number two is, given things that have happened, whether it's wars, U.S. wars, Corona, money as a topic and the pumping of money into the economy is affecting everyone. And the third thing, because information is so out there, so you can engage with many more topics. And I think the notion of what I work in, how I work, where I work, how I integrate that with family, and how I handle money has become a real topic for everyone at this point. We lived once upon a time in a paternalistic economy. There was a big employer. I got there, I lasted there 40 years, and now people aren't doing that anymore. You know, it's not, I'm going to work at GE for the rest of my life or something like that. I'll work at JP Morgan for the rest of my life. And so people are engaging with these topics much more.
So the sands are shifting. The economic patterns and norms are transforming. The economy is very important in people's lives. They're much more immersed, much more educated about the world around them, the money pumping and some of the things you mentioned. So because you're so immersed in this world and you have such expertise and you're so immersed in the world of Torah, you found this an opportunity to try to educate people, inspire people through the associations or the parallels between the economy. You'd think the economies are really different. The Torah's economy is sheep and land and agriculture, and all of a sudden we're in Bitcoin and digitization. You're trying to bridge them.
So, you know, first of all, everybody who writes on Torah brings their own lens to it. It's just inevitable. You know, the Abarbanel doesn't like the kingship or the monarchy because he went through Spain and Portugal in 1492. And the Ibn Ezra, who was a pauper, maybe we'll talk more about that as it relates to Parshat Toldot, you know, views everything through the lens of a pauper. And my lens is technology, economy, and business. But the principles are fundamentally the same. You know, when Avram has mobile wealth, he's able to travel around and do lots of things. When Yitzchak has you know, permanent or stationary wealth from farming, he needs to stay permanent. You know, and economies go through ups and downs, just like they did in the time of Yosef. And we all deal with cheats and Ramaim, like, you know, Yaakov had to do with Lavan. And there are transactions like buying Marat HaMachpelah. We buy real estate, we buy land, we buy burial plots, and we trade and we use economy for leverage in international relations, like Yitzchak does with Avimelech Melech Plishtim. And so the world hasn't actually changed that much in thousands of years. When I launched the book in Hebrew, Rabbi Benny Lau remarked on a panel that the thing he took away from the book was things haven't changed in 3,000 years. You know, family businesses are family business, like Yaakov had, and strife among family business is the strife among a family business. And you know, there were wealthy people and poor people in economic cycles, and That's just life. And the Torah is life. Eitz Chaim Hila Machazikim Ba. It infuses life, and it's a Torah Chaim at the same time. And that for me, that's real.
So what happened before will happen again.
It rhymes. It rhymes, but it's different. The foundational principles, though, are our anchors. You mentioned shifting sands. It feels like much more than shifting sands right now. Sands shift slowly. Our economy is moving at an unbelievable pace. And after COVID, digitization is moving at an unbelievable pace. And so things are moving really, really quickly. And when things move really quickly, we need timeless anchors. And I think Torah is the timeless anchor.
So you mentioned that Rabbi Lau had a takeaway from your book. And I'm sure many people like him were very interested and intrigued by the book. Who has been your most surprising audience? Which people have all of a sudden discovered your book that you could never anticipate?
A few things. So one is a venture capitalist named Keith Raboy, who I know tweeted out, every founder should read this book, meaning every founder of a startup company ought to read this book. And
what did he mean?
I think what he meant, I actually asked him, so I kind of know it, is that founders need to bring principles and ethics and values to their businesses. That's what matters in the 21st century. We live in a time where everything is so transparent that great values will create economic value. And I think that's what he was conveying. And then at the same time, Gavin Baker, who's a well-known public markets investor, said he learned more about venture capital and investing from reading the book than many venture capital books. But he enjoyed the Torah too. He's not Jewish, for what it's worth. Keith is, Gavin is not. Those have been surprising audiences, investors. It was just given out at the Jefferies Investment Bank Technology Conference. The book is the door prize. And so, and then for a while, the second best-selling city of the book was Salt Lake City. And so it's finding all sorts of audiences, and around the world, it's been surprising and humbling. And I think the Torah is what to say right now. People are looking for something right now in this moment in history. You remarked to me, the last time we met, there's a moment now. Faith is gaining traction, and values are becoming important. People are looking for them, and the Torah's got plenty of those.
So give us a little taste. I know you can't to summarize the book. It's Parshat Toldot. Tell us how Toldot can elucidate or guide us.
I mentioned before that the Ibn Ezra sees things through a poor man's eyes. So the Ibn Ezra says that Esav didn't want the Bechorah because Yitzchak was poor. And the Ramban takes off on the Ibn Ezra. He can't imagine. I think the words he uses, Misimeit Einav or something like that. And can't be. The Avos were wealthy. It's part of the Brachat to Avraham. It's part of the Brachat to the Avot. It can't be. Wealth is a big topic in the book of Bereshit. And I try to make shalom between these two giants. And what I think actually goes on is that Yitzchak was a wealthy man, but he had different wealth than Avram did. Avram had mobile wealth, movable wealth. He had Tzonu Bakar, he had Kesef Azab, things you could take around when you're running away or immigrating. Whereas Yitzchak settled down, and he built an agricultural empire. He has Avadim Ushvachot, Avudah Rabbah, many, many slaves, and that requires real management. It really ties you down. Farming ties you down. And I think Esav, who was a nomad like Avram was, didn't want Yitzchak's wealth. He wanted to go back to the Abrahamic model of movable wealth. Whereas Yaakov, the Ish Tam Yoshev Oalim, was willing to continue Yitzchak's enterprise. Ironically, it doesn't work out that way because he has to run away. And I think part of what the Torah is telling us, and I jumble the parshas there chronologically, it's, I think, inconceivable to me that Yaakov and Esav are born, and then Yitzchak goes to Avimelech, and V'nei Yitzchak metzachek et Rivka ishto. That clearly happens before. I'm not the first person to say that. Shadal brings it down in the name of Rav Woof. And but I think the lesson the Torah is telling us is times change, and what our parents did is not what we're going to do. And if our mothers maybe wanted us to be doctors or lawyers or accountants, real professions that sustained the Jewish people in exile during the 20th century, the American exile in the 20th century. In today's day and age, it's different. Technology matters a lot more. Being an entrepreneur matters a lot more. Being a solo entrepreneur is something that's viable. You can sit at home and run a business globally. And so the worlds are changing, but the Torah understands that and just says, we've got the same values of these avos. We need to persist them in whatever the new trade we're plying is.
Sometimes when you write a book, you set out with a particular plan, and life is serendipitous and it's very fluid. And as you write a book, because it's an experience in writing a book, you grow, you change as a person. The only constant is change. So how did this change you? What's your next book? What horizons did writing this book open for you? What new book did this conjure up in your imagination?
So I'm on a journey now. I've written in Hebrew, Bereshit, Shmot, and Vayikra, and I'm almost done with Bamidbar. And I, please God, plan to finish the Dvarim. It's written already. And then get them all out in English. I was asked, actually, one of the things I address in the book on Vayikra is what I call the Torah's model economy, which is neither capitalism nor socialism, but what I call Kalkalat Achva, or the brotherhood fraternity economy, or I think better in English is the responsibility economy. And actually, the book was read by a number of members of Knesset, and I got asked by a publisher to write a book actually on what does a Jewish economy look like. And what I'm really interested in right now, and I think there's a lot we got from this Beit Midrash, is we came back to Israel, the land of Israel, and set up a state 73 years ago. And as it's written in the Megillat HaAtzmaut, the Declaration of Independence, it's for the ingathering of exiles to create a place for Jews, etc. I think the next 73 years needs to be about what does Judaism and the Torah have to say about the economy? What does Torah have to say about civic society? What does the Torah have to say about democracy? What does a Jewish economy, a Jewish democracy, a Jewish civic society look like for the next generation, so that we can actually have something to export and be an Or LaGoyim and not just ingather people? What are the values that infuse Jewish technology and Israeli technology? And that's kind of what interests me going forward. And that's part of what's changed in me going forward. I think we have a lot to say, Baruch Hashem, and I think the Torah has a lot to say, and we need to translate the Torah, not into Shivim Lashon, but into Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and artificial intelligence and synthetic biology and the tools of the future.
Moving back home, you have a lot of inspiration, a lot of passion, a lot of vision, and it's hard to condense everything you took from this yeshiva, from this mountain, from our Rosh Yeshiva, our beloved Rosh Yeshiva. But is there one formative statement, slogan, idea, story that in your moments of doubt or your moments in which you want to draw strength, you return to? Is there something from this yeshiva that drives you?
When I was a first-year student here, I really wanted to have a kesher with Rav Lichtenstein. And, Rav Bazak once said, everyone's heart skips a beat when they walked over to Rav Lichtenstein. And so I had a halachic question, which he wouldn't have been the right person to ask necessarily because you could get a long-winded answer. And I've told this story before, but at the time I had a double cassette recorder where you could take one cassette and kind of record it onto a blank cassette.
The illegal one.
What?
The illegal one.
The illegal one. So I asked Rav Lichtenstein whether or not I could do this and it was halachically permissible. And he looked at me and he said, you bought the tape. They can't tell you what to do with it. You made a kinyan on it, but you're not going to get a medal for Kedoshim to you. So obviously alluding to the Ramban in Parshas Kedoshim of Shalei Novel B'Shus Torah. And I think Hashem lives in the gray. I think one of my big takeaways from Rav Lichtenstein is Hashem lives in the gray, not in the letter of the law or even in the Shulchan Aruch. Follow halacha, but there are so many gray situations in life, so many gray situations in business, so many things where you ask, what is expected of me? And that's what I take away from that story of Kedoshim too. I subsequently told a story on Rav Lichtenstein's Shloshim. I can't remember if it was the Shloshim of the yard site here. I was engaged in a business deal. We were kind of shook hands, but some of the background had changed. They come to sign the agreement, and I said, this deal is not good enough, etc. And I sat there with the guy, and the guy said, come on, you got to do this. And things have been hidden from me. And I just sat there and asked myself about that question, what Rav Lichtenstein had said at that time. And he said, go ahead, it'll be okay. And thank God it was. And, we're all competitive. We're all, it's competition. I could have gotten a better deal on the spot, but I really believe he would have said, stick to the deal.
So when you write a book, you give up autonomy, you give up control. You're the author, but the book hits the public and people read it as they choose to. And they sometimes misunderstand it, or even if they understand it, they don't always proportion it properly. They take the book too seriously and not seriously enough. I think Rabbi Sachs once said that one of the great dangers of religion is when fundamentalists read text too literally. They don't read a broader contextual view. If you could speak to each one of the people reading your book, how would you plead with them? How would you caution them against incorrect readings of your book?
First of all, that's a brilliant question. Two, it's 100% right that you lose control of what you said. life is complicated. And one should draw inspiration, and I think read the texts themselves and not what I wrote. It's my analysis of the text, but you need to go back and read it yourself at the end of the day and draw your own conclusions. I think one of the problems Jewish society has right now is we ask too many people for answers rather than seeking them ourselves. Apropos this place, they want you to find your own answers. Rav Amitai said, I don't want other Amitalim. And read the book, draw inspiration, ask the hard questions it causes you to ask, but go back and read the text yourself and draw your own conclusions.
See you on the next page.
Thank you, Rabbi Taragin.
Thanks for coming by.
Thank you.